Hello, everyone. My name's Chris Campbell. I'm the superintendent of the Plymouth Public Schools. I'm here joined by Kathy Jackson, who is our secretary to the school committee, Michelle Badger, the chair of our school committee, and Adam Blaisdell, who is our school business administrator. We're here today to talk about school finance, school budget, which is a very important topic, complicated, but really important. We're here to educate our community, to answer any questions that you may have, and to also provide information as to where you can find more information or how to reach out should you have questions. So thank you for joining us today, and we're really excited about this. So as I said before, budget is a very complicated process. Some people think that we start perhaps in December when we have our budget meetings, but I don't know, Adam, if you could just kind of explain just the detail a little bit for us about when we start in that whole process.
Sure. School budgeting starts in September. Usually what happens is we meet with the town side, and we meet with the finance director, select board, school committee, and a couple other people of the finance advisory group. And what we do is we really talk with the town and figure out what revenues are expected to come in. The finance director really crunches quite a few numbers and tries to figure out what's available the next coming year. After that, and we kind of have an approximate amount of money that we'll have available to both the town and the school, which is split about 39% between school 61, town 39%. We start meeting with going through our contracts and trying to figure out what the escalations are from the previous year and figure out what those are going to cost. We talk to our principals and ask our principals what they need and what they might be able to do without, or what they really need, and some goals. One of the things I know that we spend a lot of time talking about is our strategic plan, and we try to connect our budget to that strategic plan to make sure whatever goals are there are also, you could see them in our school budget too. And at that point, school committee meets during their annual workshop in October, which is actually coming up soon, and we work through that process with our principals and figure out what our schools need, look at our staffing, what our current staffing levels are, and look at salaries and any contractual increases from one year to the next, and figure out what our staff will cost the next year as well. And then really we put that whole package together and present it to the school committee in beginning of December. And before that, we also have some meetings with all of our principals to try and figure out, are we going to come in within that number that the town has allocated it.
Yeah, and again, that guideline, and we always look and work with the town and the finance director to meet within that guideline. Sorry, Michelle, you going to say something?
No, you're fine. That importance of that relationship with the town side and the school side, making sure that we both know what's happening and that we're all, on the same page is really important. And I think this year, the addition that we have of our budget subcommittee, which I think we're all really excited about, that we just started, but we made that official in June, I think.
Yes.
And so that'll be 2 school committee members or 3 school committee members working with you and making sure that as another means of asking questions before our December meeting. I mean, not that we didn't ask questions before, but it gives an opportunity for them to dive deep into it. And then we can come to them with questions and to you with questions. And it just is another transparent piece, which I think, you have done a really great job of just increasing the knowledge that's out there about our budget across the community.
Yeah, I think that's important. And a lot of people don't realize, when we're sitting down in those formal meetings that are publicized, I should say, with the finance committee, with the school committee, with town meeting representatives, our chairs, so the town meeting chairs. There's detail behind that, and when you're looking at the budgets well before December, when we're having those presentations and we go cost center by cost center, principal, coordinator, director, there's enormous detail in those budget presentations and reports, and they're all on your website too. We have them going back quite a bit.
If they go to the business services page, there's links to detailed budget reports. There's links to the budget books from quite a while ago. There's also a link in there to the open checkbook, which is housed in the town. But you can see expenses for any department in the entire town. And we're trying to add more to it, so it's a work in progress, so people can get more information and there'll be more transparency and people can see where their money is going. But that open checkbook on the town side is a great resource. And
Yeah.
when you click and click and click, you can get deeper and deeper and deeper into the budget and see what's spent. You can see vendors, what we spend on certain vendors in certain areas. So it's a great resource to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even in the budget itself, like when you provide the budget for us, in some cases you've got, like it's a, I don't know, $1.25 for students in art class or whatever. It goes down to that granular level, which I know for me as a school committee member has always been something I look at when I'm looking at the budget from one school to the other, making sure that, okay, we're spending this much on, ELA over here, but why is it over here? And it's always a question of, oh, they got this last year, now they're getting this. So sometimes, just asking those questions. And like you said, it's a lot that's done in the front. There's so much, or in the public, as there's a lot that's done behind the scenes and just individual conversations with the two of you, or I know with the FinCom has an opportunity, and they sometimes sit down with you for hours going through their questions, because they're not as familiar with what happens in the schools and why we do certain things. But I think that's a really important thing to remember as well. There's granular detail.
I'm glad you brought that up, and that changes from year to year.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at an ELA budget, as you said, or
Yeah.
a math budget, even if we're budgeting the same per pupil, it's going to shift because we look at the population.
Yeah.
And we're looking, for those who may not know, we look at our October 1 enrollment
Yeah.
when we do that, because that's going to change. And sometimes that doesn't work in our favor because we have additional students that come in after October 1, but we have to have a drop dead deadline, especially as we're building budgets as early as we are, which is a challenge when we're building budgets as early as we are. So we use that October 1, and that's an official number that goes to the Department of Education, which you can find on the DOE's website. But just to use that, so when we're saying what does it take to educate a student in a math classroom, elementary, middle, high school, the textbooks and everything, like you said, Michelle, that detail is important, and we go through that in great detail.
I go as far as to say the conversation starts as soon as we approve one budget. We're already on to thinking about the next budget.
That's
Like,
really
it's not
true.
just September. It's we go to town meeting in the spring. We're done. We're already starting to talk about the next year and what that looks like, and be as forward thinking as we can when it comes to not just this year, but 5 years from now, 10 years from now. How does this all go together? What are we looking at? And I think it's so important.
the
That's
same
okay.
mentioning town meeting is perfect because
Oh,
that's like
yes.
the next step in our, we develop, you develop the budget, we worked with you, we approve it, but the select board sees it, FinCom sees it, and oh my gosh, town meeting sees it, and that's where we, as part of our role in the school committee, and obviously you all as staff, attend as many precinct meetings as we can, the caucuses, so that we can answer questions there as well. Again, there's an example of another time where questions of the budget are getting asked, but not always, they're public meetings, but they're not on camera typically.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you'll go to town meeting with that budget and there won't be a lot of questions. That's because we've had weeks of discussion, both internally, like at one-on-one conversations, and also at these public meetings.
Chris, you brought up a good point about developing the budget early. That's a difficulty, to be honest with you,
It is.
because we have to develop our budget and physically develop it in September, October, November, and present it in December. When we develop our budget, we develop our budget based upon the staff that we have at that current moment in time. And so we develop what their salaries are going to be at that moment in time. There are some staff that do leave us between that point and before school starts in September. So salaries change, but our budget is developed what was there in September, October, November the prior year. We also develop, when we look at special education placements, wherever we are in that moment in time in September, October, our special education placements, which can be extremely expensive, are developed at that time. And we still, if kids need it, we will still place kids in out-of-district placements between September and when school starts. So that adds to the cost that isn't necessarily figured in. So there's a lot of things that change in a school district that doesn't stay static.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Adam, because we've seen it kind of relates to the changing demographic that we've seen as well,
Yes.
right? And we're trying to predict as much as we can. We look at historicals, we look at trends over the last few years, but we do have a changing demographic. We've seen an increase in English language learners. We've seen an increase in students with disabilities, as well as a lot of really complex challenges in our preschools with early education. There are more students that are being referred to early intervention. Head Start is swamped, and we're supporting our students. So to your point, we're building budgets in September, October, November to present in December, but we don't always. A lot happens at the turn of the year, and we're responsible for that. And it's a wonderful thing that our district is becoming more diverse, but it requires significant more support. We've seen a 350% increase in our English language learners, and the needs to support that, and that comes at a cost, and we need to support that through staff, right? And sometimes those decisions are going to be made after the budget's been approved, and we have to find a way to live within our means because we're not seeking additional funds, right? So that's something that's really important to take into consideration as well. So one thing that I think is really important to kind of speak to is the budget shortfall. We talked last year about budget. Again, you mentioned at the beginning, Anna, that we live within we live within that guideline. So we work very collaboratively with the finance director of the town to look at the existing revenues and do that proportionate share. And it's been pretty consistent for the last 10 years, I think, the finance director said recently. So we try to live within that. Last year, we had a lot of concerns, right? We had a lot of concerns because we know that revenue's down. We understand that. But we were at a point across the entire community, really, where we're looking at our contracts, right? And we had a decision to make, and we were pretty, I think, open regarding that particular issue. That we understand that we need to live within our means, but this is going to be a challenge, right? And we did a lot of presentations at the joint meeting at town hall at town hall regarding that specific, and looking at different scenarios, and talked about how it would take millions to do that. But I think there may be some misunderstanding out there in the public regarding that piece, and I think we should probably talk a little bit about that. So, for those who don't know, in the public, we had to live within a certain guideline, and we knew that we needed more money, about $2 million at least, to settle our contracts, right? We saw something, and we've been talking about it a few years, and it's been part of our presentations, our concerns with retention and recruitment, our concerns with providing a fair and equitable contract across this area, particularly in the South Shore area. We're losing teachers to the area. Our salaries were anywhere from $5,200 to $14,000 less for comparable positions and time in education, and that's not right. And we wanted to make a correction, but we knew that would come at a cost, right? We had two decisions there. Go for a supplemental fall appropriation, which we had some conversations last year about. But the more we thought about it and really thought about our employees, that's a very difficult situation to put us in, more importantly, to put our staff in. Yeah. And the reason I say that is, again, for those who don't know, we pink slipped 29 staff, which means it was a reduction in force. But the reason we did that in the spring, as you all know, was to try to find personnel funds that we could use to settle a fair and equitable contract. We spent an enormous amount of time, hours and hours and hours, trying to do that in a very strategic way so that we could find other employment opportunities for our staff. So I think that's really important. And the overwhelming majority of them, with the exception of a couple and some people moved, were able to get employment. But we did reduce those positions, those 29 positions.
I think it's really important that we bring that up because that was something that we as a committee were really passionate about, making sure that we are paying our teachers and our staff what they deserve to be paid. We've seen, as you said, when you look across the South Shore, we weren't really on par with many districts. Maybe one or two we were close with. So it was important that we make sure we're not losing our wonderfully talented teachers who have poured so much into our community. and to other districts and, to benefit their programs and not our programs. And we were seeing them leave, and some people with a lot of time and a lot of experience in the district. And so as a committee, and especially having them, we're hearing the stories of our teachers, the teachers who are working 3 jobs, the teachers who are, they're barely making it by. And nobody should do that. Nobody who is a teacher, nobody who, has probably, some cases probably have 2 master's degrees, for goodness sake, with the amount of education that our teachers have, like, they shouldn't be in that position. And so we were committed as a committee to make sure that we had a good contract that really supported our teachers and staff throughout. And I'm thankful for all the work that was done this summer by our negotiation team, just making sure that we were able to get that budget or get that contract signed. But if we weren't unable to do that, it puts us in a really difficult position. But it still puts us in a difficult position because financially, FY26 is coming up. We're talking about planning that, and we were able to really and hopefully give our teachers and our staff what they needed for those increases. But we are putting our budget into a place that's going to be very, very fun for us all to figure out as we continue to see that wedge of that pie get smaller and smaller that we're able to play with. So much of it is contracted services or salaries, and that tiny little supply line gets smaller and smaller every year. So it will be complicated, but it was important for us to do for the community.
Well, and to piggyback on that, I was going to say, we are facing a big challenge, and we all know that. But we also know that the teachers are the backbone of our education, and that without them, we don't have good schools.
Yeah.
So in addition to the fact that it's the right thing to do, because our teachers are putting in way more time than most people with a 40-hour-a-week job, it's also necessary. If you want to have good education, you have to have good educators.
Yeah. And good education gets you your property value, and it
Right,
just helps
it's
our
all
town out.
cyclical.
It all kind of connects, and so
Yeah.
it's really important that we invest into our school system.
So
in
the
every
2
way
things that
possible.
we do that are the most important is who we hire and how we support them.
Yep.
Right.
And I think we wouldn't have been showing support if we took a chance in the fall to try to get that supplemental appropriation.
Yeah.
Because as we've seen across this community, you just pick up the newspaper or online. Not many people pick up newspapers these days. But if you look online on the news, all last year, layoffs, contracts were settled, but people were laying people off in the beginning of the year. And then you're putting those people's livelihoods at stake.
Right.
The
not
majority of our staff live in this community, right? Our teachers, our paraprofessionals, our custodians, you name it, they live in this community.
They went to the schools.
They went through the schools, so they're a part of this community. So we're investing in our community, the people who live in our community. And we talk about investing in education, and just a couple of statistics just for people to understand. When we looked at applicants, we've looked at it over the course of a series of time. So back in 2008, just for an example, we had an elementary posting for an elementary classroom position, 347 applicants. We go 10 years later, again, 2018, 212 applicants, still good. Last year, 35 applicants. That was the largest application pool that we received. And that's applicants, that's not candidates. And what I mean by that is some of them didn't have licensure, they don't have the credentials, they don't have the experience that we're looking for in our staff. So it's really to go to 10% of what you were receiving before for applicants is not where we want to be as a school department. And if you look at other positions, specialist positions or secondary positions, they go from double digits to single digits. And that's just really concerning. So I'm really happy, I'm really pleased that we were able to settle the contracts and do it in a responsible way, I think, as we tried to navigate the financial waters of last year.
And that's not just our district and the numbers that have gone down. That's everywhere the numbers
Yes.
have gone down. Just to clarify, we are not like a place that people don't want to come and work.
No,
it's just the salary piece was a little much
that
lower.
doesn't help us.
It doesn't
certainly,
help
right?
us
It's not
when
going to
we
help
have a
us
teacher
when
shortage
we're trying to, we're trying to compete with the districts around us, and again, anywhere from $5,200 to $14,000 difference. Yeah, that's significant, particularly with the cost of living rents, mortgages, all that. It's just, it becomes unattainable.
Yeah.
for
And
people.
it comes into play, I think, even a little bit more, because I know a lot of times when you look at compensation packages, you're really supposed to look at benefits as well. Where we have to remember is with those those kids that are coming out of school, those teachers that are coming out of school, they're 22. And so from 22 to 26, insurance doesn't matter to them. We offer a great package in Plymouth, don't get me wrong, when you look
Yeah.
at benefits. But from 22 to 26, if they don't need benefits because they're covered by their parents, they're looking at the bottom line. So they're going to go to a district that pays them even $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 more. So if we can be a little bit more competitive, which I'm hoping we're going to get a little competitive now, we're going to draw them in a little bit. And then once they get, then that's when the total compensation package comes into play, is when they get past 26.
Well, and let's
Yes.
face it, at 22, you're not really all that concerned about the benefits anyway.
Yeah,
I wasn't in my
exactly.
first
No.
teaching position.
No.
I can tell you
I
that. In fact, I wasn't offered insurance at first, and I wasn't concerned. But your point is right on. Absolutely. We talked a little bit about transparency and the importance of that. I think we've been transparent, but this is certainly a goal of ours. This is to continue to enhance transparency for the public in terms of how we're spending our money. And you mentioned some of those things, Adam. Can you give some examples of what we're doing to further enhance our
Sure. I
transparency?
think like I said, really it's our business services page that we're trying to add more and more resources. One of the things that Dr. Campbell and I have talked about is really just how do we get some information out more on a monthly basis through, the town puts out a great sheet that says where does your tax dollar go, and trying to do something like that similar to the town. So you'd have a town one and you'd have a school one. We do a lot of that with our budget book, but sometimes I think a one-sheeter is a lot easier to understand. So we're going to try and put some information out on our Facebook page and just little blurbs just to give people a little bit that they don't necessarily have to read a lot of language, but hopefully some infographics that will show them where the money goes in regards to our students. And it really goes, it's really to educate our students, and but it's really to get that information out. We're hoping to get more.
And we, and we've talked about this year, you're doing quarterly updates moving forward to the committee itself. So I think, and you're doing like the enterprise accounts and everything like that. So that's helpful as well to give a full picture of what what we look like.
Absolutely. Another part of our important part of our budget, which is in our operational budget, to a degree it is, but which is critically important, is facilities. And I thought we should talk a little bit about this. It's really important that we have safe, welcoming, clean buildings, and I think we do a phenomenal job. Our facilities department does a phenomenal job of maintaining our buildings. We have some very old buildings though, and it's hard to, like, routine maintenance is critically important when you have 4 elementary schools that are 50 plus years old, and the rest are between 72 and 114 years old. We have beautiful state-of-the-art high schools, but we do have aging facilities, and it's like an old home, right? Trying to take care of an old home. So that's something I think that is a priority of ours, is to make sure that we're maintaining our facilities.
Our custodians do a spectacular job. They really, I mean, if you walk in Hedge, which is 114 years old, I should know, I was principal there, but I can't remember. You wouldn't even know it. I mean, they do a really good job. Everything is clean. They fix things when they can, but facilities are getting older. HVAC is a major issue in this district. I hate to say it, but COVID did a number on our HVAC units. We followed the guidance and we put thicker filters in there, MERV 13s, and it was like they had to work harder. The units had to work harder to try and deal with those, and we paid the price for it. So really, we have to do a lot of HVAC work. We have 2 HVAC techs that are wonderful, and we contract with different contractors to work on them. But it is a challenge to try and keep up with those. But you're right. I was doing a walk through PCIS the other day, and the comment was, well, these windows are over 50 years old. They're the original windows, so they haven't been replaced. You know that if you have a 50-year-old window, you probably stand next to it on a cold winter day, you can feel the breeze come in. So there's a lot of facility issues that we're addressing, and we have a 10-year plan that we're following as best we possibly can, but if we don't do something one year, it gets pushed to the next. And we contracted several years ago, I think about
Yeah,
3 or 4
it
years
was
ago.
July
to
of
do a
21.
facilities.
Yeah, we did that
Oh.
facilities condition assessment, which
Oh, yeah.
I don't think a lot of people realize that, but that was part of a capital request. That was actually my first summer request.
Yes.
To really do a comprehensive look at all of our buildings, from the rooftops to the foundations and everything in between, to really get an idea, an educated plan of like recommendations for immediate remediation as well as long-term 10, 15 years out. But the challenge with that is there's so much in that plan and there's not enough money, right? So we have to get creative, and there's where our fantastic facilities team comes in to try to stay in front of things or to keep things going, which may be worn out, whether it's the fans and the HVAC or HVAC techs or sealing the windows over and over and over again. But it's that, the capital funds that it's not a part of our operational budget, but we seek, just like the town does. But when you have police and fire and DPW, school department, and all these departments and divisions looking for capital improvement funds, it's challenging. It's challenging in a district, a community this size with the limited funding that we
Well,
have.
and you look at the funding, excuse me, and like how little facilities operates on in comparison to what you spend. I mean, you were telling me the numbers, like $1 a square foot.
Yeah.
And they keep our buildings up to the caliber that they do. I mean, and then you just put that in perspective with your own home. And, I had to replace my roof this year, and I only had to do part of it, and it's still, I spent more than $1 a square foot for that one project. And so operating a whole facilities department for an entire school system on that, I mean, really, they've been like phenomenal.
It's really, we have like 1.4 million square feet of buildings, and you think about that, right? And you're doing it with about $1.5 million dollars in terms of investment in that routine. And like to your point, if you had 1,400 square foot house, $1,400 is not going to go far,
Right.
right? So it's a challenge.
But the more we do it, the better we're off long term. And so I think that's what's always important when we're talking about a capital outlay, or when we're talking our school budget and what facilities does. It's if we do it now, it's going to cost us less. That's what that book told us. If we do it now, this is the cost. If you do it in 10 years, this is the actual cost, because it's not just the surface issue you have to deal with. It's the 4 or 5 other issues that were caused because of that surface issue that you needed to deal with. So I think was eye-opening when I read through that big report, and I learned a lot of construction terms I did not know, but like it just is, it's important and eye-opening to see the number of things that need to be done in the district. I mean, the book is this
It's
thick
substantial.
at
It's
least.
almost 400 pages.
Yeah. And so I think that it's important that as we look forward, and the facilities done such a great job, before I was on the committee, and the entire time I've been on the committee, to keep the buildings and looking beautiful. You walk into Head, you don't know it's 114 years old, other than there's only stairs. That's the only time you realize it's 114 years old.
Yeah.
But,
To that point, ADA accessibility is an
yeah.
issue, but it's a beautiful buildings.
Yes.
And I think because of the limited amount of funds, we've really focused on the envelope of the building, meaning the windows, the roofs, the brick, just to make sure that the building is weather tight. And you don't think that you would need to concern yourself about that, but we do. We've had some leaks and issues, but we've resolved those over the past. And then HVAC, as you said, Adam, it's really the air quality and airflow and air exchange, making sure that our systems are operational, up and running. Both very, very expensive pieces that take a lot of money.
And I don't think I think also the other misconception, because I had it too, walking into this position a couple of years ago, is they figure, okay, we just built South High School. We just opened it actually 7 or 8 years ago. But some of the issues with the newer schools too is they're more technologically advanced. So the systems are a lot more complex. And so even though they are more complex and even though they are newer, they still cost a decent amount of money to maintain, because you're actually always dealing with the controls and with temperatures and moisture, and technical pieces break too. So you might be working on an HVAC unit, but it actually might be a piece of technology that you're replacing or fixing too. So the newer buildings are more technologically advanced and we have to maintain them as well.
Well, and then you talk about
Good call.
ADA compliance, so that's another thing, like when you're looking at the capital projects, like it's not just fixing this problem, but if this problem is over 30% of the cost of the building, then you have to make the entire building ADA compliant. And so now you've just opened up another can of worms when it comes to the budget, because now you're looking at what else do I have to do? And some of our buildings, we would never be able to make them compliant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good point. I'm glad you brought
Yes.
that up. We did an assessment actually of our one-story elementary schools just a couple of years ago, and you wouldn't think the number would be this high, but in order to bring it up to full ADA compliance, when you hit that threshold, we're talking a $1.6 million per building.
Yeah.
When you're getting $2-3 million in capital in the spring, it's an impossible feat.
Right.
Yeah, so it just delays projects because of that condition, and it just makes it really challenging. We've talked a lot about funding, the importance of funding, but why should someone be concerned about school funding and school budgets if they don't have school-age children?
So many reasons.
So, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind for me is property value. You know what I mean? Good schools make people want to move to your town. And when people want to move to your town, it ups the value of your property. And as your property values go up, your taxes go up. But if your property value drops, your taxes don't go down.
Mhm.
So, you know, you want to continue to live in a town where you're generating revenue, you're generating, you know, maybe a small business owner that comes in and opens up a new thing because he wants to put his kids in the school, or, you know, it's all cyclical. So it doesn't matter if you have school age children or not. Like everything that you do is tied in with good schools.
Community benefit. I mean, it's a huge community benefit.
Yeah.
If we have good schools, that means we have people going out into the world and getting involved in successful businesses, setting up their own businesses, or becoming an apprentice somewhere in a union, or going to college and hopefully coming back. But finding that job that they can do really well. They're going to be taxpayers. Again, cyclical. We're going back into that. It's a community benefit. If we have well-educated students, they're not going off and just like not without a path or a dream or a goal or whatever they want to do moving forward. They have a path to get there if it's military or whatever. But we are educating them to make sure that it's the community benefits as a whole.
Yeah, there's
Someone who doesn't have kids.
an enormous amount of research out there that will show
Yeah.
that the direct correlation between communities that invest, and our community has invested in, and this is not saying otherwise, that continue to invest in education and all of the other benefits to that community, whether it's crime or businesses or the property tax value, all of that is that there's a direct correlation. You can look at that in communities and just research that. It's
And
important.
if you look at like early childhood education, isn't it like something you invest between $1 and $4 in early childhood, and you get something in the ballpark
It's
of $100
exponential return.
back? And so by
Yeah.
investing in our preschool and by investing in our elementary school, like you're saving yourself money throughout the school because you have early intervention. But like you said, in crime, in recidivism rates and things like that, you're really just
Yeah,
saving.
it's that early
Yeah.
that early investment it pays out dividends.
Yeah.
To your point.
And I was in the schools growing up, and I'm old enough to remember how things were in the 80s, and the schools were so overcrowded. There wasn't enough staffing to really, I mean, they tried their best, but there really wasn't enough staffing and resources for all the students. It's one of the reasons that we built South and North, because we're going back a really long time. But it was bad, and we don't want to go back there. And I think anybody who's been in this town as long as I have can remember what it was like back then. And all you have to do is think about, is that what you want for your community? Is that what you want for your kids? Is that what you want for your housing values or even your neighbors? I mean, we're a collective. What happens to one of us happens to all of us because it's all a trickle-down effect that spreads out.
Heard a lot of stories from a lot of people who were back here in school in the 80s. It's just
sessions.
incredible. Yes. So we talk about community and the importance of community, but how can the community get involved? Get involved in budget, get involved in supporting, what suggestions do any of you have for community involvement in this process?
Well, I think to just get involved in some of the activities, see what we have to offer. I mean, we have so many things that we offer the community. So if they were to come in and just see what we offer and see what we see the kids do, I mean, you have our VPA events, you have culinary down at South High School, you have watch some of our EdTV productions. So start, I think, really seeing what we do. I think that would be step one, and seeing how it benefits our kids and how these things benefits our community. I mean, VPA, the shows that they put on, anyone can attend those, and they're spectacular. Going down and working with the auto shop at the VOTEC program down at South High. I mean, there's so many different things. So if people were to see what our kids do and what they perform, I think that's step one, to see the value you get out of the education and what these kids come out learning and being able to contribute to the community. And they contribute a lot to this community.
I don't know how many people know, but I mean, you can have the electrical department come out and do work at your house. I had them come out and install a generator as a citizen before I was on the school committee, and you can hire them just like you can hire anybody else, and it gives them, you know, the experience, and they're working under a licensed professional. So it's a huge benefit in giving back to the community.
Yeah. And then once they see the benefit, they can join a school council. And we're always looking for school council committee members,
Great way to get
community
involved.
members.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you know, and that was one of my first school councils. I was on Adams at South. And you know, you need community members. That's what they struggle to get, and that's where you get to see and help create the budget and kind of the vision for that school. And that gives you kind of a microcosm, a little bit of look into that overall budget that we have. But it's always fascinating to hear directly at the school level, and then obviously, you know, FinCom and school committee. But there's so many ways to get involved or advocate on behalf of your school, your school's needs. I mean, I know that Kathy and I both love to hear from people that want to tell us what they think their school needs or what we need to hear. You know, when we go and we read in classrooms, I think that's one of my favorite. I think all of our favorite questions to ask to the students is, what do you love about your school? But also, what would you love to see change? And usually it comes with like, I'd like more recess equipment or, you know,
Pizza.
dino nuggets, pizza,
Yeah.
whatever. But, you know, it's important to hear that, and you can see what, and so we got, I was somewhere not that long ago, and they talked about they needed a new, I don't know if it was a kindness bench, but they had needed a new bench
Okay,
where, in their area, they just didn't like where it was. They wanted it in a different place. And I was like, that was great. So I think it's just important, in whatever time commitment you have, because school committee is a lot of time, but there's a role for everyone to play in advocating for our schools. Town meeting members advocate for our schools. You know, we have people who just are parents, not just parents, but are parents within our district who advocate for what they think is important as the budget goes along, or throughout the year. Coming to public comment is another way to actively engage. And I was talking to my cousin is in our civics class, and they're talking about like, civics is not the right word, but that's what they're learning. And she was like, I don't know I have to write a paper on 3 things that I can do to engage. And I'm like, you can write an email. That's easy enough. That's passive. You just write us an email and we read it and we'll get back to you, and you can respond if you want. You can, you know, go to a meeting and be heard. And I think I told her, I was like, you can, you know, research and reach out to your local elected officials and whatever level that is of the passion that you find or your area of advocacy. And she was like, I can't do that. Yeah, you can. We hear from, that's how we got the dress code changed within the public school
Yeah,
system.
with
It's hearing from students.
That's
I mean,
right.
we wanted
That's
to
right.
change it, but that was really the impetus to be
No,
like,
student voice
they're
is
speaking
important.
to us.
I
So,
think you brought up a good point when you were talking about playgrounds and things like that, community involvement.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of community partners over the years that have helped us with some of those projects that we would love to do, but are not necessarily cost affordable as we're in some lean and challenging times right now. But there are a lot of community members that have come. I mean, we have a beautiful playground at Hedge School now, and I think that was due to a lot of community support.
Yeah.
And I know there are other schools that are looking to do things like that, and the PTAs have been wonderful to fund some of it, but the wish lists go on, and they fund the busing, they fund the field trips.
We do an
So-
enormous amount for
We couldn't
cultural
do it without
programs.
them. Our
And
PTAs are crucial. or The
Absolutely.
boosters are crucial. They're
Absolutely.
all crucial.
Community involvement with the tech programs
yes,
too.
and to that, and even like if you want to come in and volunteer,
Yes.
even for a day, or if you have a schedule where it permits you to come in more often, we welcome that. And I think we have a lot of wonderful volunteers across all schools that come in periodically. Some of them are there as much as the staff, and volunteer coaches, volunteers in the classrooms, volunteers helping out in the schools, readers, a whole host of ways to volunteer. And I think through our volunteers, they really get a great appreciation for what's happening in the schools and get a perspective. Any final thoughts before we wrap up, do you think?
I think going back to your other question is just really as a final thought. I think it's really looking at a lot of those resources that we have in regards to knowing how the budget works. Those resources should answer quite a few questions in regards to where the money goes. And I think if people are looking at it, you'll see that it all goes to a lot of it goes to salaries in regards to teaching our kids and making sure our kids are well supported and have opportunities. But it's really looking at those documents, looking at what's there, and coming to the workshop, the budget workshop, and listening to how we created that budget and where the money goes. But it's obviously we wish we could have all the money in the world. It would be great to have a tree outside of our offices
Right.
so we could pick at it and get it. But there's limited funds, and we try and do the best we can to serve our kids. But I think really looking at those resources, asking questions, and
I think that the grants too, on top of that, which we didn't really even talk about, there are some of our budget is covered by grants, and we're really, lucky to get large sums. I mean, we just got a big one at
Yeah,
South High School.
Two of them, in
yes.
fact, yes. And we get state and federal
yeah.
allocation grants, which have gone
Yes.
down, unfortunately, and I think that's a sign of the times, right? But we have a lot of just dedicated people who write competitive grants, and we were, as you pointed out, Michelle, very fortunate to receive 2 grants that are supporting our CCTE programs. One to completely renovate the South High School TV studio and broadcast journalism. A lot of people don't know that equipment was brought over from the old South High School and reinstalled in the new South High School. And that building has been open since 2017. So that's over a decade old. And so we're very fortunate to receive a substantial grant for that. And then most recently, a clean energy grant, which is supporting our construction cluster that will actually provide over $670,000 for us to build a structure outside where students can actually learn about, the industry standards today for clean energy in construction, home construction. So really excited about that. Just announced it the other night to our advisory folks at the advisory dinner. So really excited about that.
And I think I would echo as a final point what Adam said. We're all here to answer questions. I mean, our numbers are listed on the website and our email addresses. And if you have questions or concerns, we're happy to try and make it as transparent and clear as possible. I know it can be a really complicated subject, but we want people to be able to understand and feel comfortable and confident with the budget that we're putting out, because really we're here to support the community.
Yeah, I think it's a good way to sort of end. It's like if you have any questions, if you have concerns, to reach out to any of the numbers that are on the line, school committee members, as well as Dr. Blaisdell, myself, our phone numbers. We also have an email address, hometownvoices@plymouth.k12.ma.us. And I encourage you, any questions regarding budget, school finances, anything at all, reach out. We will answer that. And also go to the school business services website. As Dr. Blaisdell said, there's a whole host of information out there, and we want to share it with you. And if you have any suggestions or things you're looking for, just again, reach out to us. And we're also welcome to any suggestions regarding more information that you would be interested in receiving regarding anything that we talked about today in greater detail. Just reach out to us. So thank you so much. This was great, and I hope that it was informative to all of you as well. Thank you.